Welcome back, everyone, to another episode as we continue our international month. And today we're going all the way to Spain. I wish I was there for real, but today we're speaking with Joe Jacobi. Joe is the owner of Joe Jacobi Performance Coaching. He is the first ever Olympic gold medalist in whitewater canoeing, along with his partner, obviously a two-man thing. And he advocates for strategies and shares insights to help individuals live and perform at their best, focus on meaningful work, and engage with purpose. His expertise is showcased through performance coaching and consulting, personal speaking, broadcasting, and writing. Joe, welcome to the show.
Enrique, it's so great to be here. And my gosh, this conversation is long overdue. I've been looking forward to it.
And so have I. We are both outliers. I just want to throw that out there first. And I'll speak about the Outlier Project at the end. But today, our conversation will focus around from gold to glory, an Olympic champion's journey through triumph, trials, and timeless excellence. And before we get into that conversation, Joe, tell us a little bit about you that we may not know.
Well, I think you kind of hit on one of my favorite parts of the story is that I'm living in the Spanish state of Catalonia. I've been doing that for been living here for 7 years now. I absolutely love living here. And Enrique, what I like to sort of tell people as an icebreaker, it's that I think sometimes when you go to bed every night in the same bed and you kind of wake up in the same place and you hear the same sounds and you speak the same language. And I think what I like about living where I live is that not only did I have some history with it before moving here 7 years ago, but I like waking up just having a little bit of a moment of clarity where you have to tune into a different language being spoken. You hear different sounds, you smell different smells, and you just really, there's just sort of a moment of tuning into life that is all about learning. And it's like, and you wouldn't think of it, like no one is speaking English with me to set up a dentist appointment or get a haircut or buy vegetables from the market. I do all that in Catalan. And it's like, that means like every day I wake up needing to learn to live life. And I love that.
And I know that's a wonderful experience. The Navy afforded me opportunities to go abroad
Yeah.
and expand. It is one of the areas that we seldom, as Americans, we seldom take advantage of. I believe in global leadership. And so there's a lot of growth in that environment because, as you just said, you wake up to something that's not normal. You have to expand, you have to develop your mind. Your senses are heightened and they explode at times because of what you are experiencing. I'm happy for you as a world traveler. I know that it has been one of the best things that have happened to me during my life.
And by the way, just to sort of double click a little bit on this idea of global leadership, Enrique, I think it is the perfect kind of words, the perfect phrase, especially in theme with what you're doing with the podcast this month. I think, especially some of the younger listeners paying attention to this podcast, your children, my 23-year-old daughter, this idea of global leadership, this isn't like a nice to have. This is a must have for working. The kind of work that our kids are going to be doing, that if you're in your 20s right now, you're going to be spending your career working in teams, not necessarily long term, but wrapped around projects that involve people that are in different parts of the world, were raised with different kinds of values, with different kinds of perspective. And the teams that perform well are going to have their own internal systems for getting to appreciate and understand and learn and adapt to people who are different than them and say, this is the task in front of us. And it's not just clapping our hands and like it's a done deal. Like it really takes work. It's a practice. But that is what that global leadership is all about. I see it in the workplace all over. it is not just a nice to have skill. It's going to be like a need to have skill for the young people tuning into this podcast.
Absolutely. And if there's been any growth in my life, it has been because of the global mentality. We cannot just cocoon ourselves and
Mm,
expect everything to go the way we have been exposed to. There are so many different factors that go into leadership. One of them at the global scene, which really impacts everyone, right? So it's like you throw a rock in a pond. On the global scene, everybody is impacted. And so thank you for making that highlight. Now, I want to focus on the leadership side this morning of your journey. And we know that every journey has its ups and downs. You know, your journey pre Olympics, your journey in the Olympics and out of the Olympics have all seen this, trough and crest, as well as all of us at some point in time. So let's ask a question around the highs and lows. And can you share with us the highest point of your career and then what that felt like to achieve that moment? And then conversely, what was the lowest point and how did you overcome it?
It's so interesting. I love the framing of the question. It's a little bit different than the way a lot of people tend to ask about it. I, of course, a high moment in sport, certainly doing well at the Olympic Games was amazing. To win the gold medal in 1992 in the doubles canoe with my canoe partner Scott Strasball was amazing. But it was a process, and that in itself was not like an up and to the right growth curve. Like that had some tremendous highs and lows to it. But I think there were other great, neat, really interesting moments in sport, whether they were involved me and things that I experienced for the first time, like winning a medal in a World Cup race or winning a World Cup race or seeing a teammate make a breakthrough or even kind of just watching one of my coaches have a good day, even if I wasn't having a good day. Like I like that. I tend I don't think it's so surprising. Like I have a human brain like everyone else, so I would say some of the down parts come to mind more naturally to me, not because like I focus on the negative, but because they're opportunities to learn. And so two that I'll share with you, one is an athlete and one is an executive. On the athletic side, about a year and a half before the 1992 Olympics, Enrique, a friend and I were paddling a river, not on training. We were just having fun paddling rapids in a very rural, remote part of Tennessee. And we ran over like a small waterfall. We went over a small waterfall. And at the bottom of the waterfall, my boat flipped into the oncoming water and I dislocated my shoulder. And then like a sequence of events of just bad luck happened, and I ended up out of my canoe on the wrong side of the shore. And this was in December of that year. It was a warm December day, but it wasn't going to stay warm for very long, and it was late in the afternoon. And there was a road on one side of the river and it was nothing on the other side of the river, and I was on the nothing side of the river. So, long story short, that rescue effort was about my shoulder was, out of the socket for more than 5 hours, uh, just a year and a half before the Olympic Games. It was a long recovery. That was a hard experience, but there were a lot of things to learn in that setback. There were a lot of choices that I made about wanting to move forward and wanting to improve and wanting to grow. Not necessarily athletically, like that wasn't possible, but intellectually, was a big opportunity to learn more and to study the sport from a different perspective. And so that was one experience that I bounced out of. And then the other one was more the low point was I tell this story a lot from my executive experience when I was the chief executive officer of USA Canoe Kayak. And Enrique, when I got that job, I had never had like a normal paycheck job in my life, and now I was chief executive officer. I didn't have a leadership style, really. And I didn't have a coach, which would have helped me a lot during that time. But in short, like I was really good at taking care of everyone else, but really bad at taking care of myself. And the low point really kind of happened about 2.5 years into my 3 years into my CEO role. And typically we had a pretty rough work day when that was happening. But most Olympic sport federations are, are these membership based organization, and there's like a second work day at night when all the volunteers are home from their normal work, and now they're doing like volunteer committee calls and board of directors calls and officials and all these committees. And I hated it, and I was really run down and tired. And I just, a typical night for me, this was night, like after dinner at about 7:30 at night, I wouldn't brew a cup of coffee. I'd brew a pot of coffee. I'd have like a computer, a tablet, a phone out on my bed. I'd have the TV on with the Oklahoma City Thunder basketball game in the background. And yeah, I didn't like life. I was running myself into the ground. I weighed about 60 pounds more than I do today. And I was really unhappy. And I believed so much, Enrique, that, the rule of work was that, you put yourself in a situation where 80% of the situations and 80% of the people were people in situations you didn't like, in exchange for 20% of people in situations that you did like. And I thought that was just kind of the way work happened. And of course, I don't believe that today at all. It's like, not only is it the opposite, but everything I do in work today, I don't have a single client that I don't like. I don't have a single call I don't look forward to. So all these low points, that's really what comes to mind to me. It's not the successful stuff, it's the lower stuff. And not because I obsess on the negative, but because where these are the opportunities where you can learn the most. Sorry for the extended answer, but I that's just what comes to mind for me.
No, I love that because it is true that we learn from mistakes. If pain, if agony does not happen, there's no incentive, there's no drive to,
Absolutely.
to learning something, to saying, "Oh, wait, that I won't do again," right? Or, "Wow, I could have done it this way." And so, no, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that the listeners will definitely agree that that is where we actually learn in life. So,
Yeah.
oftentimes those pain points we don't really want to relive, and that's okay. But because we lived it, we're much better for it. Now, as you mentioned, the high points and the low points, all these happen in our pursuit of success and our pursuit to be great at something. And you were great at something. It resulted in a great accomplishment. Being the first is very big, if you ask me. But what drove you to pursue greatness in your sport? And then how did you stay motivated through the rigorous training and competition schedule? Because I know it really does compound after a while.
I love the question, and interestingly, I think the answer to both questions is the same. I was never like pursuing Olympic success, and I think getting through the rigors of training was very simple. Um, I was in a sport that I enjoyed a lot. It didn't matter whether there was the Olympics or not. I loved paddling on rivers. And equally important, I loved the people with whom I was sharing the river, with whom I was competing. And that got me excited just to go to the river every day. I never, when I started canoeing, canoeing wasn't even on the Olympic program. Like it was just, it was the highest, the furthest you could go in the early 1980s when I started was the World Championships. And it was great. Like I didn't care about the Olympics. In fact, by the time our sport was added to the Olympic program for 1992, my canoe partner and I, we had already won medals in World Cup races. We were fifth at the World Championships just after the Olympic announcement. So we were like already kind of one of the top five doubles canoes in the world at the time we became an Olympic sport. And so I think the Olympic notoriety, the success, it had nothing to do with it. Like, paddling rivers are fun. In fact, just before I did this podcast, I was out in the sea paddling on my surf ski kayak. And like, I'm so jazzed up surfing waves in the sea. Like, I love that at 54, my age today, that that paddling is still a really important part of my life, that I love to do it. There are so many Olympians that get their success and they hate their sport when they're done with it. They don't ever want to see it or touch it again. And I'm very lucky that canoeing is just one of these sports that, if you set it up the right way, it's truly a sport you can do for your whole life. All these things made it easier to just want to improve and get better, and find your own way forward. And I would say that I don't want to repeat my life as an Olympian. I have no interest in living my life like that. But I would say, if there is something that's similar at 54 years old as there was when I was 22 years old, it is wanting to improve within my way of improving, not someone else's way of improving. It's really hard to find your own way to perform. Like, it's not easy to develop Enrique's performance plan, completely unique to Enrique. We can get so influenced by other people and what other champions are doing, what Kobe Bryant's doing, what Serena Williams is doing. But we can learn from those people, but we can't do it their way. We have to find our way, which is not easy to do. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of focus.
Yeah, definitely. I've often said that if you were some other form of puzzle piece, you wouldn't fit, right? Yeah, it just wouldn't. It's you were meant to be the piece that you were meant to be, and in order to really bring out the, and I love when you talk about, I could see and hear the joy around what you do, and so, and I was thinking that's where real success happens, when you are enjoying what you're doing along with actually working it. Both those things meet, and you get this epiphany, you get this fireworks going, and you could do it forever. And so I love that you still maintain that passion that you had when you were in your 20s doing this just for fun. And and I'm happy that everything aligned. You were doing it, you were at the world stage already, and here comes this opportunity, right? And then history has been made. But thank you for sharing that. And I truly believe that when you really love what you do, it no longer becomes a pursuit of anything. It just is.
Yeah, I love that. It is funny. I actually do have a purpose. I have a life purpose, but I have a purpose related to canoeing today, and it's so simple. And I just want to see beautiful things from the water with my girlfriend Maria. And Maria and I paddle together in a canoe on rivers, and we also paddle on surf skis out in the sea. And the funny thing about that purpose is like, we could see dolphins or a beautiful sunset, and you'll never say, "Oh, box checked." Like, what's the next thing? Like, you will keep wanting to experience beautiful things together that you get to see from the sea. And if I really want to be true to that purpose, if you really want to know, like, what gets me up out of bed and, bring like what I love about going running. I'm a 5 day a week runner, Monday through Friday. I have a sun salutations practice, which is really good for my body, and I do some meditation. All these things added together improves my ability to stay out on the water longer, whether it's for this session or for more years ahead in my life. And that's just going to make the things that I've directed my compass towards, my purpose, more likely to happen. And even getting more specific, Enrique, when I'm out surfing waves on these offshore ocean waves on the surf ski, I'm not even doing the work. I'm letting the waves carry me in alignment with my values, my strategies, and my purpose. And that to me, if I'm not using my own energy, if I'm tapping into the free energy of the waves, that's going to keep me out there. It just means I've got more energy to push into something else a little bit different. Again, it's going to keep me out on the water. I'll be a little bit less tired. I'll be a little bit more on the mark when I need to push. And I love that, and it's like the water is still teaching me the best life lessons that I could imagine. I always say that the river and the sea are the two best life coaches one could have.
Yeah, I often when I go do some things in the morning, I look up in the sky and it's my private art gallery, and that's where I get
Oh,
a lot of inspiration because no sky is ever the same anytime you look at it. I'm a meteorologist by trade, and I know how the clouds and all that and levels and all of that. But when I look at the sky, and you're talking about being in sync, right? Being in sync with life, it just becomes so much more pleasant. And then you can use that and your energy for the things that really matter in life. And so I love that you shared that. Now, earlier we talked about failure, and I wanted to talk about the pains of it because failures happen, we do learn from it, but there's some pains and agony that that occur during those times. So how did you handle setbacks and failures during your journey, and what strategies did you use to turn those moments into opportunities for growth?
It's a great question. I'm not so sure that a few years ago I was very good at doing that. I think one of the reasons that we feel pain, or that I felt pain in some of those setbacks, is because I was worried about what other people were going to think. I worried about what other people thought about me, and I don't mean this in a cold or callous way, but I don't think about those things anymore. And, or I should say, I have the list of people that I care about, what their thoughts are. That's very helpful in kind of, helping me keep going, moving in alignment with my compass, my North Star. But yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, is being able to let go of those external circumstances. And not everyone is going to do that the same way or in the same time. But you're with time, you're going to see those those hard times a little bit differently. With time, you're going to have different perspective and context. But the biggest thing that I see today is that I just have so little space for what other people think. I'm really just trying to do what I think is the right thing. I don't worry about how I look, how I appear, not how other people think of me. And I'm just focused on doing the best I can, putting myself in the best position to manage my energy well. That's when I tend to create the most value and do my best work. Write essays that are the most helpful to people, do coaching work that's the most helpful to people, to put myself in a position to enjoy adventures and athletic experiences and relationships.
Yeah, powerful comment there. When you our mind is already occupied with so much as it is, to start taking some of that real estate and giving it to whoever else's thoughts may be coming in. And it does lighten the load. And it definitely does allow you to align more with yourself and the things that are important. I love that your list has gone down. Mine's has definitely gone down through the years. And I think as we get older, we start to say, you know what, enough of that. That's not even important anymore. But you do see a lot of joy, even in times where you may fail. You start to see more joy out of those moments. Not that they're enjoyable, but you start to see the possibilities of future joy from that. So thank you for sharing that. That was wonderful. Now, we all learn lessons in leadership. We all learn lessons in professions, especially as we start to execute at an elite level. But what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned from your experiences in training, competition, and life in general as an elite athlete?
No, it's a great question. I think in the elite athletics, I think there are a few that come to mind. First of all, Enrique, we've talked a little bit about the fact that in my Olympic canoeing, I paddled in a doubles canoe. I went to two Olympic games and I paddled the doubles canoe in both Olympic games, and they were with different people. So in 1992, I won the gold medal with Scott. And then 12 years later, I competed in Athens with another canoe partner named Matt. And these two canoe partnerships were so different. And what I really learned is that I like to tell people Scott and I were not 180 degrees different, but we were probably about 179. And I truly believe, had we been about 175 or less, like I don't think we would have won the Olympic Games. It wasn't easy to be in a relationship and a partnership that is like so widely diverse. And by the way, I'm just going to say I realize diversity might mean something different in 2024 than it did in the 1980s when Scott and I started to paddle together. But I think it's still really helpful. Like, I think the diversity of teams, the diverse perspective of you bring to a situation when a little different than you, it kind of goes back to this, to this idea of global leadership. I think it's so powerful, and I feel like I'm living that a lot in my life here in Catalonia as well, as I sort of adopt and adapt and embrace the spirit of Catalonia, the surroundings, the environment, the spirit of the people, and I think that the diversity of it all is is really important. And then secondly, I think again tuning into the way you're going to work, like the idea that we're going to reach our goals as performers, as leaders, as sales leaders, sales managers, by like using a system that was designed for someone else. This is not very realistic to me. Everything I've learned in sport is like you've got to figure out to how to do it in a way that really works for you, not just how you work, but with your values and with your mission and your strong points and your weak points, and building around that relative to the situation that you're in. I think this idea of building a performance plan for yourself, it's really hard to do. And by the way, I know you're active on LinkedIn. We hear about all the way the greats are doing it. Oh, here's like 10 things that the world's top billionaires are doing before 5 in the morning. That's not going to help you. Like, that it's a different world. It's a different game. That's not your way. That's their way. Doesn't mean you can't learn, but I think learning how to create the filters so that you start just taking what you need from the information that's coming in and applying it to your way of working, it's such an important lesson in leadership and performance.
Now you mentioned at 5 o'clock in the morning, folks. You will never see me getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. I did that for 26 years. I'm done
Sure.
with that. It worked for what it was, right? And so you have to know what it is required of you today, how to apply that so that you can still enjoy the journey. And I think a lot of people take the joy out of the journey of life for the sake of a pursuit of someone else's results. And when you do that, that's when we become misaligned. A wave out of sync, it cancels itself out. You know, it doesn't
So
amplify.
let's dig into that one. I mean, this is perfect. I just published today. I published a weekly essay called "Thinking in Waves," and I write about these experiences that I'm learning surfing offshore ocean waves on a surf ski kayak, transferred to an innovative model for more clear thinking and making better choices and performing in alignment with our values. And they're very short essays. And today I was writing about the title of today's essay, it's not really a word, I made it up. It's called over resiliencing. And the idea is that when we sort of listen to these influencers like power through it, be more gritty, be more resilient, what's happening is you're setting up the floodgates for rigidity. And when you use someone else's system, and whether it's Kobe Bryant or Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt, it doesn't matter. Serena Williams, it doesn't matter. That's their system. It's not yours. And that rigidity of believing like that's the way you're going to get it done, the it really is not only going to cause frustration, but um, it just prevents you from feeling and aligning with the wave that you could be surfing, the wave that's meant for you. And that is why, like, if you let go of resilience and you replace that a little bit with more flexibility, with more adaptability, with more consistency of really small steps forward every day, you will realize improvement. And by being a little bit more softer and more open approached, you will start to see things about your environment that will help you adapt and get more out of those waves. And whether it's for our thinking or whether for the actions that we want to do in life, I think the waves really do model the life in such a nice way, because the wave is not permanent. The whole life of a wave, it rises, it collapses, and it rises again. And as long as you accept that the wave is going to collapse, and it's going to collapse a lot, which doesn't mean it's the end of the road or the end of the story, it's an adaptation. And the biggest problem is just believing like, oh, that guy has the right way, has the right system. That's like believing that the wave is never going to collapse, and you're just putting off getting to know yourself better.
Well, I love this conversation because I'm also an oceanographer. So, it's right in tune with the things that I have seen myself.
Love
And
it.
you mentioned taking advantage of the wave for you. And it looks like you have done that pretty consistently. You're maintaining a top performance shape out there doing this right before the show and continue to run, 5 times a week. As you continue to stay in top performance shape, what specific routines or practices do you follow to ensure you maintain physical and mental health as you age? Because we're all getting there.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I don't do it rigidly. I mean, I just give you a few examples. I do the things that you just say, but as an example, I haven't used a piece of technology, anything. I don't take a phone with me when I run. I don't measure, I don't time, I don't track heart rate, steps, speed, nothing. When I go out for a run, I'm listening to two things. I'm listening to nature and I'm listening to my thoughts. That's it. And, you know, I don't go out and say I'm going to run this far. All I do is that I say I'm just going to get out and start moving for 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll decide. I'll start to negotiate with myself. I'm really gentle and soft with myself about how I do it. All I know is that doing a little something is better than nothing, and I'm good with that. And I think bringing that into my activities is really important. And then secondly is that I like learning new things. I like trying new things, and by whether that's learning new language, living in a different culture, changing from paddling on rivers, something I was the best in the world at, to paddling and surfing waves in the sea, something that I am learning as a beginner right now, is awesome. I'm just firing up that sense to learn. And at the end of the day, when I talk about this idea of midlife peak performance, which is kind of my thing, is helping people to do this, it only works because I spend a lot of time thinking about what that looks like for me. And I don't prescribe anything for anyone else. When I work with people, it's about going through a process to figure out what your midlife peak performance process looks like for you, and start not only setting that up as like a performance plan, but really helping you to get the skills and the mindset to not care what other people think. So you're not out there comparing yourself. You're only comparing to yourself and putting that in perspective.
That's a powerful position to be in. And I love the fact that you have removed all of these, containments of things, right? The time and pressure of this and getting sidetracked by a phone or this, or that, and you miss the whole entire opportunity to just take in life. Take in life, take in beauty, listen to nature, clearly hear your thoughts. And a lot of times we don't do that. So kudos to you for doing that. And I hope that the listener or viewer is taking some notes because try it. Yeah, I'm telling you, when I go out and I look at the sky, I just take it in, the
Love that.
colors, the light, how it's shining through, the type of clouds that are there. Now I have an advantage because I know what they are, right? But I take it all in and it just dramatically changes the experience. Now, talking about experience, you have this, peak performance coaching, consulting, this thing that you do. So, what do you have coming up that the listener may be interested in? Or how can they get a hold of you if they like to engage you in helping them get to what they require out of life?
Yeah, thank you so much, Enrique. A couple of things. One, LinkedIn is a great way to connect. I love the platform. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, it's very easy to subscribe to Thinking in Waves. That is my weekly essay where I'm just transferring these lessons learned and experiences on the surf ski kayak surfing waves into a model for clear thinking and better choices. Um, Secondly, um, on the coaching side, just coming up, we have the Olympic Games coming up in Paris in a couple of weeks, in the Paralympics after that. I'm a co-founder in Elevating Leadership Institute, along with Inga, who is an Olympian from Lithuania in the javelin, and Bahar, who is a world-class bodybuilder, and our partner Montes as well. From Lithuania as a part of our group, but we're going to do some programming during the Olympic Games, and these online talks, live free talks, where instead of just talking about like what we're seeing and watching in the Olympic Games, we're going to be extracting what people are seeing during the Olympic Games and applying those ideas and lessons to being a better leader. And like that's a big part of what we're doing at Elevating Leadership, is taking our background and experience and setting up world-class training conditions, practice environments, and giving those, creating those spaces for leaders to grow and develop and expand their influence and impact. And it's such a cool thing that we're doing there. And so, if you follow us on LinkedIn, that will be the easiest way to keep up with those events. Again, they'll be free. If you follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn, that'll be the easiest way to hear about those upcoming events.
Well, outstanding, folks. We'll make sure to have all the links that you need to get a hold of Joe and all that he's going to be doing here in the future. Thank you, Joe, for taking this time to be with me and sharing your journey and all that you shared today. Folks, I want to remind everybody that today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, the Outlier Project, and Duco. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast or want to sponsor our show, we'd love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And this podcast is brought to you by StreamYard, a browser based tool that lets you live stream to any platform and record podcasts in studio quality. And we're using it to record this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle and another place on this globe. And as we like to end the show, success to you.